Maharajpur to Gwarighat. Is this the same Sahasradhara? We had seen it the last time from the opposite bank, during the Diwali holidays, not long after the monsoon. Truly, it was 1,000 cascades, living up to its name. The Narmada's abundant streams were flowing in torrents, brimming with exuberant energy as innumerable rapids spread far and wide. It was an awesome experience to go near the terrifying surging current. And today, an intensive search yielded one slender stream. The dry riverbed seethed like a hot cauldron. Where we had seen the Narmada in full bloom, in this scorching heat she was barely breathing. Everything was barren, blind and dumb. In the worst drought of the century, wells and reservoirs, rivers and streams were drying up. Villages were empty. All of northern India was suffering from an unprecedented water shortage. It was hardly surprising then that the Narmada too had dried up in this severe heat. We left Maharajpur on 27th May 1980. It was our first day on the road, and even in the morning the sun was scorching. So we did not go far. We stopped in Menadehi and from there went to look at the Sahasradhara. We had expected the flow to be reduced, but this thin stream masquerading as the tremendous Narmada was unbelievable. We had seen the Sahasradhara in full splendor, brimful of water, bounding and bouncing, displaying pride and power. Today we were faced with this subdued aspect, waterless, voiceless, a mere skeleton of stones. After all, who does not meet ups and downs in life? There was one advantage of the dried up river. The riverbed had revealed itself like an open book. We could clearly see how the force of the current had cut and chiseled the rocks. The elegance of the stars is revealed when there is no moon, and the anatomy of a tree when it is leafless. We had a similar opportunity to observe the riverbed. The water had carved great big holes in the rocks, which were connected by underground passages. We went down through one hole and came out through another. It was as if the river's ears had been pierced. Whirlpools swirl inside these holes, and once trapped inside, it is near impossible to escape. This is why even the best swimmers do not venture into unknown waters. The next day we were off before dawn. We arrived in Bujbujia in the scorching heat of noon. This village was an oasis of greenery even in the drought. There was a forest department nursery. All kinds of plants were growing there, particularly teak saplings. There were different plants in the distance. I asked a labourer what they were. Lipstick plants. Lipstick? I echoed in astonishment. He encouraged me to take a closer look. They were eucalyptus plants. Here there was a bit more water in the Narmada, even small waterfalls. We found a forest department room nearby and camped on the veranda. A compounder lived in the room. He had come from Mandla only a fortnight ago. As it was extremely hot, we slept outside that night. Yadavendra and I on the ground, the compounder on a string bed. It began to drizzle at about 1:30 in the morning. So Yadavendra and I moved up onto the veranda. The compounder soon followed with his string bed. About half an hour later, the compounder yelled, "Snake! Snake!" We, too, sat up, alarmed. I grabbed my torch and switched it on. There was a snake. I felt it slide over my arm and woke up in a panic. I looked at him. He was scared stiff, speaking in fits and starts. His fear communicated itself to us. We searched everywhere by torch and lantern light, but found no snake. "You must have made a mistake," I concluded. "There's no snake anywhere. Besides, you were sleeping on the bed, well above the ground. How could a snake climb up there?" It really was a snake. I saw it with my own eyes. We didn't believe him, but only minutes later I saw the snake making its way over the steps of the veranda and slowly coming towards us. The compounder was right. Using a long stick, I flipped the snake outside where it drank long and thirstily from a puddle. Then it glided away, leisurely, rhythmically. The compounder said, "Kill it." "You kill it," I replied. "I can't do it. I am petrified." "Well, Yadavendra, you kill it." "I have never killed a snake in my life, sir. I can't do it." "If you great warriors can't kill a snake, how do you expect me to do it?" The snake slithered away to a sal tree and paused there, before slowly climbing up the trunk. This was the first time I had seen a snake climb a tree. There was now no reason to doubt the compounder's tale. Further down, another snake, thicker than the first one, was climbing a nearby tree. We recoiled in horror. Had we inadvertently stumbled upon a colony of snakes? Pitch dark, the deathly quiet and tree-climbing snakes. Fear gripped us. Just then the compounder, who had disappeared, returned with a young boy carrying a stick. We could see the first snake climbing down the tree. As soon as it reached the ground, the boy hit it hard, twice, with the stick and put an end to its life. The other snake had disappeared in the branches of the tree. How could anyone get any sleep in this situation? We stayed awake for the rest of the night. "Tomorrow," the compounder declared, "I am going straight to Mandla to give my resignation. 20 years of service be damned." We too intended to be off as soon as possible. So off we went in the morning. Last night we were so frightened that we had killed the snake, but today I felt sorry that we had killed a nocturnal guest that had done us no harm. If the snake had not crawled on the compounder's arm, we would not even have known about its existence. If it had not come on the veranda for the second time, we would not have believed the compounder's tale. If it had not made its way down the tree in our presence, it wouldn't have been killed. It was this last twist of fate that led to its death. There was not a breath of wind. The earth was parched. Trees had withered in the sun. It was already midday when we reached Ghagha. Instead of going into the village, we settled under a tree on the riverbank. A hot wind began to blow fiercely in the afternoon. Somehow we managed to cook lunch, eat, and lie down to rest. Whenever the shade of the tree shifted, we shifted too. Our bodies were covered by a fine layer of dust, but listening to the wind and the bellowing trees, the mind roamed dreamily as we lay there, accepting the buffets of the hot wind. By late afternoon, layers of dust had encrusted us. I resembled Mohenjo-daro and Yadavendra Harappa. The only difference was that the ancient cities were excavated by others, whereas we extricated ourselves, stood up and walked away. We made arrangements for staying in Ghagha. then went out for a walk. There was another village nearby, Ghaki, where we went to the river bank. The Narmada appeared to be flowing by the opposite shore, so we crossed the dry sand to get there. When we arrived near the opposite shore, we were astounded. There was no water flowing at all. We could not believe our eyes. The Narmada's flow had broken. We had walked in the summer last year too, but never seen anything like this. There was a thin trickle on our right, which resurfaced far away to the left. But in between there was not even a drop of water. On previous journeys, we had seen the Narmada in exile, but now we saw her traveling in ignominy. We could reach the other bank in 10 steps if we desired, but we did not go. The Narmada was not visible on the surface, but she was surely flowing beneath the sand, so we accepted her presence and came back. Our next stop was Budhera. Here, too, the flow of the Narmada had broken. From Budhera to Jhurki, the headman of Jhurki was a jolly fellow. Welcoming us, he asked someone to bring some primitive sarbat. It turned out to be a refreshing cold drink, flavored with myrobalan, mint, and other herbs that made it sweet to taste. It's homemade from fresh ingredients, not like that packaged stuff city folk drink these days. That's why I call it primitive or prehistoric sarbat. I saw that this cheerful man was also living under the black shadow of homelessness. Nearby in Bargi, a big dam was being built. His village and other villages close by would be submerged by the dam. He was worried about where they would go, what they would do. The dread of becoming homeless was not his alone but shared by the whole district. We stayed the night at an ashram in Padmighat before starting at daybreak. The trees looked black, as if they had been charred. That evening we reached Bakhari. We found shelter in the headman's house, but when we asked for water, he picked up a bucket on a rope and gave us directions to the well. When we tried to get water, we discovered that the rope hardly reached halfway down the well. The water level had fallen drastically as a result of the drought. A villager living in a neighboring shanty realized our plight. He brought us a length of rope, which we joined to ours and got water at last. This was the only well in the village with water. The others had all dried up. From here we proceeded along the river to Chindavaha. At Roto we found shelter in a forest guard's hut. The trees nearby were being felled, as this area would be submerged by the dam as well. It was necessary to cut down all the trees first. In the morning we continued along the river bank. It was another extremely hot, windless day. At noon we came upon a number of laborers, men and women, resting under a tree. They were laying a road nearby as part of the relief work. Some were sleeping, some singing during the siesta hour. Their middle-aged foreman did a spontaneous dance. Their songs were so enjoyable that we decided to stay the night at the home of one of them in Gopitola. At night, they would sing and dance again. Yadavendra was about to cook our meal when our host prevented him. "You will have your meal at my home." This man, whom we had seen doing back-breaking work in the midday heat of the hottest month for a mere pittance of 4 rupees a day, says, "You will have your meal with us." Such generosity is touching when people barely have enough for themselves. We enjoyed the folk songs and dances until late into the night. Our next stop was Bijasen. Here, too, we saw dances at night. These people knew how to savor the joy of living, despite their hard toil and impoverishment. We reached Paili the following day, by way of barren hills. The man whose house we stayed in was a widower. "Why didn't you marry a second time?" I asked. "My children were very young. I thought, these children have lost their mother. If I marry again, they will lose their father too. So I didn't. Now my children have grown up. The eldest son has brought me a daughter-in-law." We went to the river bank in the evening. I had been here once before, 25 years ago. There used to be a dense forest in those days. I still remembered the long creepers that clung to the huge trees. But now nothing remained. Everything had fallen prey to the axe. Early the next morning, we set off for Bargi colony. My pace quickened of its own accord. My eldest son, Sarad, lived there. Standing outside his door in the fierce sun, I called out, "Give us alms." In the evening, we went to look at the dam being built across the Narmada. The site was teeming with thousands of workers and hundreds of machines. The dam wall was just about finished. Going down inside, I was astonished. What had seemed at first glance to be a solid wall was a tunnel, gleaming in the electric light. I was told that tunnel was for inspecting the dam. We left for Temar Sangam early the next morning. How proudly the Temar comes to meet the Narmada. Even in this drought, she had water. A light shower began while we were bathing in the confluence. Realizing that we were bathing in a Triveni Sangam, a meeting of three waters, first the two rivers, then the third, coming from above, made me very happy. As we left Bargi colony, we found something new to observe. Rocks were being blasted and large canals dug out. When the dam is complete, the whole area will bloom with riches. But what will happen to the pilgrims? When both banks of the river are covered by an extensive network of canals flowing with water from the Narmada, the pilgrims will face a problem. Can they cross the canals or not? Crossing the canals will be like crossing the Narmada. But to avoid crossing the canals, it would mean taking a very long detour. It would not be a Narmada pilgrimage anymore. In my opinion, when the Narmada changes her form, the rules of the pilgrimage should also change. Canals will be the second generation of the Narmada, and smaller branch canals the third generation. Pilgrims are accountable to the river, not to the second and third generations. Therefore, no fault ought to be incurred by crossing canals. We stayed the night in Khamaria. From here, we followed a road reached Gwarighat at noon. This part of the journey was complete. We had started from Gwarighat on the opposite bank and ultimately returned to this side. On the way back, the sight of the villages on the opposite bank had played chords on the strings of memory. Walking along this side, we remembered those living on the opposite bank and sent messages so they could come over to meet us. The teacher from Patha, the holy man from Sahajpuri, Tularam from Chevalia. All very kindly came to see us. Tularam even brought his wife and children. They all brought flour, rice and dal for us. Patha, Sahajpuri, Chevalia and Barahayakhera on that bank, and on this side Ghagha, Jhurki, Bakhari, Ruto and Paili. Farewell to you. Now you are but transient guests. Your days are numbered. To you also, enchanting banks of the Narmada. Farewell. Narmada River of beauty, farewell to you too. Farewell, because you, too, will be swallowed up in the wide expanse of the lake on the dam.